Hi everyone, this is Suleiman from Art Crafter. Today I'm painting a little cozy house in watercolor. I'm using a Lamy Fountain Pen, and the ink which I'm using is platinum black ink, which is waterproof and it is suitable for the watercolors painting. I wanted to keep the sketch loose and expressive, focusing more on the mood and character rather than on the strict accuracy. So that is why you can see that my lines are not straight. These are a little bit juggling, and these shaky lines are creating a character in this uh, sketch, right? So that is why we call it loose sketching. So you just let yourself loose. The only important thing is to keep the perspective um, in mind when you are using or applying the lines. So as you have seen that I started with a pencil outline, you would have noticed in the beginning of this video. So I wanted to use a reference for this painting, but then I just let it go and used my own imagination. I'm still keeping a partly reference from the painting, the picture, the reference picture, but I'm not 100% following it. I'm just keeping it for the shadows, casting, and to understand the perspective. So I'm just blocking the main shapes, the roof, windows, doors, and I'm adding a little character by adding a chimney on the top of the roof. And here I am casting some fence, again no straight lines. Just go with the flow, with your mood. This is the soul of the loose sketching. So you don't need to get stuck into too many details too early. These lines gives the structure, and then later on when I'll apply the paint, so the paint will bring it to the life. So I'm connecting the gate with fence, and I'm using the bold lines just to give it an appearance of a wrought iron gate with some decorated bars. Few more fence on the left side of the painting just to give a balance. And one tree on the background to complete the composure or the composition. So I begin with the light wash for the sky, and I'm using French ultramarine from Winsor & Newton. So I already wet the paper before applying the color. So this is letting the blue bleed naturally to create a soft and airy background. So here I'm adding some background for the sky. This is crimson red. And by the way, I'm using a medium brush here. And I'm leaving some white paper. This will be used as a reflection because I will not use any highlighter at the end. And this will highlight and it will give an appearance of the highlights that the light is touching that part of the building. Using the same ultramarine, French ultramarine for the shadows. Now working on the tree using a variation of the greens with sap green, little bit of French ultramarine, and you can see that my sky and the tree wet on wet. And here I have added some ultramarine blue with green just to cast some shadows on the right side of the tree, just to give some depth. Again, on a wet paper, I'm applying the facade color with a burnt umber. And again, keep this very loosely. On the right side of the wall, I am applying blue, and this will be used as a base layer for shadow. We don't need to do too much details here. Keep your brush lightly and apply it loosely. Here I'm using burnt umber and burnt sienna's mixture. You have noticed that on the right side of the tree. So I have used the variation of green with some ultramarine blue with yellow ochre, and it's giving a very nice texture for the tree. So on the facade of the house, I'm using burnt umber with some Payne's grey, a little bit of French ultramarine, and it is giving an appearance of a brickwork. I didn't draw any brick there in the initial sketch, so I'm using the brush and the paint to give some appearance of the bricks. So in this layer, I'm going to use the darker tones for the shadows. And this will really helps the house pop up and feel three-dimensional. So as you're seeing that I didn't use any line work for the window and the door. I'm just using the brush strokes to define the door and the glass on the window. Here I'm using the Max Payne's Gray on the fence. And I apologize, this is my first video which I'm recording, first ever video. So that is why I'm fumbling, and it's really hard to explain about what we have done because this is a voiceover. Maybe next time I will try to have a live recording, because now it is something like I need to relive that moment and explain what I did. So here again I'm using the darker tones to cast the shadows, and this is really giving the character to the house and overall painting. So if you recall the initial sketch, it was just a house, fence, and a silhouette of tree. Some more dark shadows. More touches on the fence to give it a depth, and also to suggest that the light is coming on from the left side of the painting. So these details bring the whole scene together and give it personality. I have really enjoyed this playful and expressive painting. You do not need to add too much details. Just keep it loose, soft, and airy. Thanks for watching, and I hope this inspires you to try some loose watercolor sketches too. The final details You can see that the right side of the wall is still wet, so it's wet and wet paint. A few more details to give the depth. And you can see that the white paper which I left intentionally, it is giving the highlights, so I don't need to use the highlighter here. Focus more on your mood and the character of the painting. You don't need any accuracy here or in any painting. And you can add any element of the architecture whichever you have seen during your traveling or a visit to the city. You can add it here. And here is the finished piece. Thanks for watching.